Before we begin, if you believe in rising again when the world forgets you, take a second to subscribe, because here, we speak to those who refuse to stay broken. The world may have turned its back on you, but here, we don't look away. Now, listen closely. He used to be everywhere. His name echoed in rooms, his laughter filled spaces, his presence carried weight. But one day, it all stopped. The phone that once buzzed with messages went silent. The people who once said, "I've got your back," moved on to other faces, other names, other stories. And him, he simply vanished. No big goodbye, no drama, just gone. They didn't even notice at first. Weeks passed, then months. His name slipped from conversations. The world moved forward, as it always does, leaving him behind like he was just another page in someone's forgotten story. You know that silence, don't you? The one that follows after people stop calling, after you stop explaining, after you realize that no one's coming to save you. That's where he lived. That's where he learned what kind of man he truly was. Because when the world forgets you, that's when life finally introduces you to yourself. At first, it broke him. Nights blurred into mornings, mornings blurred into nothing. The mirror showed a face he didn't recognize. Tired eyes, a hollow stare, the weight of unspoken regret. He kept replaying every mistake, every missed chance, every word he wished he'd never said. The silence became heavy, almost unbearable. He tried to distract himself. Music, scrolling, meaningless noise. But nothing filled the void. Because deep down, he knew the truth. He wasn't just forgotten by others, he had forgotten himself. And maybe, that's the worst kind of loneliness. The one where you can't even find yourself anymore. He used to ask why. Why did they stop caring? Why did she leave? Why did everything he built crumble so easily? But the more he searched for answers, the quieter everything became. The world stopped responding. And in that silence, he started to hear something else. Something faint, something honest. His own voice. It didn't scream. It didn't beg. It whispered, "Get up." The first time he heard it, he ignored it. He was too tired, too lost. But it came back again and again. "Get up, move. Don't let this be how it ends." So one morning he did. Not for anyone else. Not for validation or revenge or applause. He got up simply because something inside refused to die. That's where rebirth always begins. Not in noise, not in motivation videos, not in someone's approval, but in the quiet decision to move when no one's watching. He started small. A walk before sunrise. A notebook filled with thoughts. Push-ups on a cold floor. No posts, no updates, no witnesses. Just discipline whispered through actions. He started rebuilding from the inside, brick by invisible brick. You see, that's how real strength forms. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. When nobody believes in you. When nobody is checking on you. When it's just you, your breath, and the voice that says, "Keep going." The world may have forgotten him, but the silence became his teacher. It taught him patience. It taught him how to sit with pain until it lost its power. It taught him that revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's becoming someone they can no longer reach. And maybe that's what you need to hear right now. That you don't need to post your comeback. You don't need to explain your silence. You don't need to prove you're still standing. The people who counted you out were never meant to understand your growth. Stay silent. Stay focused. Let time whisper your name again. He began to see progress. Not dramatic but steady. Muscles returned. Confidence quietly rebuilt itself. The fire in his eyes came back. Not the old one, desperate to be seen, but a new one, calm and controlled. He stopped chasing people and started chasing purpose. He realized the ones who left had freed him. The noise that vanished had created space for clarity. The loneliness that once crushed him now sharpened him. And somewhere between one sunrise and another, he stopped caring about being remembered. Because the truth is, being forgotten is freedom. It's the moment you're no longer tied to expectations, no longer performing for applause, no longer living for recognition. You can finally live for yourself. That's when you begin to rebuild in silence. That's when every small victory feels sacred, because you earned it alone. So when people finally ask, "Where have you been?" you won't need to answer. The way you carry yourself will say everything. He was still gone from their world, but in his own, he was becoming unstoppable. He started to disappear from the places that no longer fed his soul. The chats grew quieter, the fake smiles faded, and slowly, the noise of the world turned into background static. He didn't announce his absence. He just vanished. People assumed he was done. Some pitied him, others mocked him, but he was never gone. He was just somewhere they'd never dare go, the depths of himself. While they spent their days scrolling and talking, he spent his rebuilding. Every scar became a reminder, every mistake a teacher. Every quiet morning, a declaration that he wasn't finished yet. He stopped talking about potential and started becoming it. You have to understand something. Rebirth isn't beautiful. It's brutal. It's lonely. It's the kind of pain that breaks every weak part of you until only the truth remains. He faced it every day. Some nights, he sat in the dark with his fists clenched, shaking, whispering to himself, "I will not die here." He meant it. He turned pain into structure. He took the chaos in his mind and built routine from it. He replaced self-pity with self-respect. And when the world kept throwing silence at him, he stopped fearing it. He started using it. While they slept, he trained. While they talked, he planned. While they doubted, he executed. He became obsessed with control, not over others, but over himself. His emotions, his time, his discipline. Because a man who controls himself can never be controlled by anyone. There's something dangerous about a man who rebuilds in private. You can't predict him. You can't stop him, because by the time you realize what he's becoming, it's already too late. That's what he became. Quiet, calculated, unshakable. And for the first time, he didn't crave attention. He craved mastery. His mornings became a ritual. No distractions, no excuses. Just cold air, empty roads, and the sound of his own footsteps echoing through the dawn. That was his proof of existence. That was his therapy. That was his revenge. Not against them, but against the weaker version of himself who once begged for validation. You see, the moment a man stops needing to be seen, he becomes dangerous. Because now, everything he does is for himself. And that kind of focus cannot be destroyed. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The mirror that once reflected pain now reflected power. His silence wasn't emptiness anymore, it was strategy. And the best part, nobody saw it coming, because while the world was busy chasing attention, he was chasing evolution. He learned to speak less and listen more. He learned that sometimes, growth isn't about adding, it's about subtracting, removing everything that weakens you. People, habits, distractions. He built his empire quietly. Not an empire of fame or followers, but of peace, purpose, and mental strength. And the few who noticed the change, they didn't know how to react. Some tried to come back into his life, pretending nothing happened. Others started to feel uncomfortable around his silence, because deep down, they knew they could no longer reach him. That's the irony of silence. It makes noise when you master it. He started walking differently. Not faster, not louder, just more certain. Every step said, "I'm not the same man you left." You could see it in his eyes. That calm, cold fire. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything anymore. And maybe that's what real power is. Not arrogance. Not aggression. Just quiet certainty. He didn't post quotes about discipline, he lived it. He didn't talk about healing, he showed it in his actions. He didn't chase closure. He created it by outgrowing everything that broke him. The silence that once suffocated him now fueled him. He realized that the world doesn't owe him understanding. That people will forget you the moment you're not useful to them. That love without respect is just manipulation. So he stopped expecting and started building. His mind became a fortress. His heart became guarded, not bitter, but wise, because he finally understood that some things don't deserve explanation. Some people don't deserve access. And some memories deserve to stay buried. He learned that growth requires loss. You can't carry everyone with you. The ones who left, let them. The ones who stayed silent, let them. The ones who doubted, let them. Because their absence was part of the design. You were supposed to be alone. That's where you meet the real you. He stopped chasing people and started chasing peace. And in doing so, he found something he never had before. Clarity. He didn't need to be loved anymore. He just needed to be respected by the man in the mirror. That's the shift. That's when everything changes. Because when a man starts living for his own standards, not the world's approval, he becomes unstoppable. He no longer needed closure from others. His success became the closure. His silence became the proof. His growth became the answer to every unasked question. The world forgot him, but the man who returned wasn't the same one they left behind. And that's what happens when you rebuild in silence. You come back sharper, stronger, colder. When they finally see you again, they'll whisper, "What happened to him?" And you'll just smile. Because they'll never understand what it cost to become this version of you. You died quietly so you could rise privately. And now, your silence speaks louder than any words ever could. He no longer looked for the spotlight. He was the light. He no longer waited to be chosen. He chose himself. And that was enough. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destroying others. It's disappearing long enough to rebuild into someone they can never reach again. So if you're listening to this, and you've been forgotten, understand this. Your silence isn't your weakness. It's your forge. Your loneliness isn't punishment. It's preparation. Every second you spend in the dark is building the man you're meant to become. The world will never announce your transformation. They'll only notice when you return. And when you do, don't go back to prove them wrong. Go back to remind yourself that you survived. You turned pain into purpose. You turned loss into wisdom. You turned silence into power. That's not weakness. That's mastery. So when they finally see you walking again, head high, eyes calm, no need to explain. Just remember, you don't owe anyone a story. You are the story. And that story is far from over. He didn't need an announcement to mark his return. No grand reveal, no post to prove it. He simply walked back into the world, not louder, not prouder, but different. You could see it in the way he moved. Slow, measured. Every gesture said he'd been through something no one could quite understand. And that's the thing about transformation. It doesn't ask for permission. It just shows itself, quietly, through the way a man carries his silence. The same people who once doubted him began to notice. They couldn't explain it, but they felt it. His energy had changed. He no longer chased conversation. He didn't correct anyone's story about him. He didn't try to fix misunderstandings. He just smiled and kept walking, because the truth was simple. He had nothing left to prove. The man who once needed validation now moved through the world like he owned his time. Every word, every look, every decision came from a place of calm certainty. He no longer reacted. He responded. He no longer complained. He calculated. And that made him dangerous in the most peaceful way. He had learned that silence is the most powerful language there is. It confuses the arrogant. It humbles the loud. And it strengthens the disciplined. So he carried that silence with pride. Not the silence of defeat, but the silence of a man who no longer needs to shout to be heard. He went back to the same streets, the same corners, the same city that once swallowed him whole. But now, everything looked smaller. The problems that once broke him, meaningless. The people who once hurt him, irrelevant. Because once you've rebuilt yourself from nothing, nothing can break you again. He realized something deeper too. He was never fighting against them. He was fighting against the part of himself that believed he needed them. That's the war every man must win. The war against dependency, against weakness, against the illusion that peace comes from being understood. Peace doesn't come from others. It comes from owning your silence. So he kept his circle small, his standards high, his energy guarded. He learned that solitude is not emptiness, it's power. The kind of power that builds empires quietly, that shapes destiny without needing a crowd. And for the first time in years, he looked in the mirror and smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because he had finally become someone he could respect. That was all he ever needed. Not fame, not revenge, not closure, just respect from himself. He understood now that being forgotten was the best thing that ever happened to him. Because if they hadn't walked away, he would have never learned to walk alone. If they hadn't doubted him, he would have never built his strength in silence. If life hadn't broken him, he would have never discovered what he was made of. Every loss had been a message. Every betrayal, a lesson. Every moment of loneliness, a test, and he passed. So he no longer asked why it happened. He simply nodded to the past and said, "Thank you. Thank you for leaving. Thank you for doubting. Thank you for forcing me to become what I should have been all along." He didn't seek to return to their world. He built his own. A world made of peace, purpose, and power, where his time was sacred, his silence untouchable, and his heart no longer something anyone could toy with. He had become the man who fixed himself in silence and came back unrecognizable. The story didn't end in revenge. It ended in mastery. Because the real victory isn't when they finally see your worth. It's when their opinion no longer matters. So if you're still in that dark place, if you still feel like the world has moved on without you, let it. Don't chase noise. Don't beg to be seen. Let your silence build you. Let your discipline define you. Every morning you rise while others sleep, you're proving something. Every time you keep moving when no one's clapping, you're sharpening yourself. And one day, without realizing it, you'll wake up as a different man, unshakable, untouchable, undeniable. They'll look at you and see calm, but they'll feel power, because real strength doesn't need to shout. It just is. He finally understood that the journey was never about being remembered. It was about becoming so complete that forgetting no longer hurts. So he walked on, silent, steady, focused, into a future that belonged entirely to him. And as the world spun on, as people laughed, doubted, moved on again, he just smiled, because he knew something they didn't. He knew that silence is not the end of a story. It's the beginning of greatness. And the man who learns to live in it never loses again.